Welcome back to the Gin's Treasure. Today we're going to do something a little unique. I recently reached just over 1,000 subscribers, and I'm thinking, there we go, get the focus right. I'm thinking in celebration, I did plant a tree. I planted a little walnut tree, if you've seen my post. And I think that I'd like to continue planting one tree for every 1,000 subscribers. I think that's a cool idea. But as well, in addition to that, I think I'd like to do a little celebration. So this is a Malachite. This is my favorite type of crystal. And if you'll notice, it is kind of an awkward shape, but it does have kind of clean edges, and there's like a face shape and then a back side as well. And what we're gonna do is wrap this in a unique way that is a little bit more intermediate than it is beginner. It's gonna be like, what do I call it? I call them triple wrapped as opposed to double wrapped, as we've been doing. And what I mean by the triple wrap is that I'm gonna use, in addition to the standard 24 and 20 gauge wire, I'm gonna use some of this here 18 gauge wire. Boy, the focus on this camera is just off today. That's all right, just something to deal with. And so I'm doing about an arm's length, in the sense of basically from the bottom of my palm of my hand to my elbow. That's gonna be that amount of length for the 18 gauge wire. And then from there, I'll just clip that off, set that aside for now. And I've already clipped off, this is the 20 gauge wire, and it's about a full arm's length. So from the tip of my my fingers here, pulled all the way tight, all the way just past my shoulder. And so this is one, and I actually have a secondary one that I found was just kind of spare wire from a previous wrap. And I'm gonna end up using both of them. But for now, I'm gonna set aside the 18 gauge wire, the crystal as well. And then we're gonna start by wrapping the 24 gauge wire. And I am gonna end up using a lot of this. So I've done probably, hard to eyeball or estimate just how much, but I'm already, I pulled it my full wingspan's length, and I'm gonna do maybe like 1 and 2 wraps, coils around, unwinding the spool here. Do one more just for good measure and show you what I mean. So that was full wingspan plus 3 spool unravelings. And then from there, this is a lot of wire. So in order to be able to work with this amount of wire and not have it get in the way, what I'm doing is just coiling it around my 4 fingers. And then I didn't really count how many I need, but I'm aiming to get towards the middle. And then so what I'll do is swing it around and do the same thing on the other side. So I'll just coil it around my fingers. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is obviously not a part of the actual wrap. This is just to kind of shorten the length in a metaphoric sense metaphoric. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're not actually shortening the length. You're just kind of shortening it temporarily to keep it out of the way. And then from there, we're gonna take the 2 tips of the 20 gauge wire and slide down to find the middle. And from there, you're gonna take that 24 gauge and kind of just eyeballing the middle. It's not gonna necessarily be exactly the middle. And actually, what I'll do is this is the 20 gauge wire. I'm gonna coil these up as well because it is slightly just a little bit longer than what I would like for it to be. So I'll just coil that real quick. All right, and then we get back on track with the wrapping here. So this is more or less, it really doesn't have to be exact. The middle for both the 24 gauge wire and the 20 gauge wire. And from there, I'm just gonna begin to wrap slowly, carefully, and get my initial wraps down. I think it's because I accidentally tapped the screen on I'm recording on my camera, my phone camera. And I think because I've already tapped the screen, it's like set to focus at like one specific distance. And that's why a little bit of a trouble with the focusing right now. And so as I continue to wind, this is really just gonna be a big portion of what we're doing for this full video. And then in a second, I'm gonna show you a technique that I picked up on to help make this process go faster. Because if you could imagine, if we're just doing this winding 1, winding 2, winding 3, we're gonna be here all day. So what I'm gonna show you is a little trick that I picked up on to help wind a little faster. So if you notice, I've done kind of this 90-degree turn, 90-degree turn, so it kind of zigzags. And so from here, I'm gonna pinch down on my 24 gauge wire and have the 20 gauge wire resting on my finger right about here. And then kind of like reeling, kind of like a fishing reel. And then as you can see, this goes a lot faster. But you got to keep in mind here, if you're not careful, you can unintentionally start to wrap these and wind this, and you're thinking, well, that's great because that's winding it for me. It's actually winding in the wrong direction, so you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So if you saw what I did there was just a quick little realignment. So I bent one more 90-degree turn here, and then that way I can continue to reel, because if you'll notice, as I tend to as I reel, the line obviously goes outwards, and this little spinny here gets further away from my hand, and the further away it gets, the more out of control it gets, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to reel. And as I'm doing that, I'm kind of also unwinding that coil that I did around my fingers from earlier. And then as well, I'll uncoil this and unwind that a little bit as well. So here's about the length where I'm ready to, once again, boom, boom. Now I've got this new zigzag. And if this is like not perfectly don't expect it to be. Don't worry about that. And so as you get the technique down, you can go a little bit faster. And I'm thinking about how the lengths of these wires, it's going to be tough to know your measurements. I mean, every crystal has a different length to it. I don't know what size crystal you're using at home. And really, for the size of the crystal that I'm using here, the malachite, I don't really know exactly how much length of wire I'm going to need. But as I kind of always say, it's better to overestimate than underestimate, which is funny because I tend to be more of a frugal-minded person, and it took me a lot of mistakes and trial and errors to finally get to the understanding of like, all right, well, in this rare occasion, it is better to not be so conservative-minded and trying to save wire for later. It's better to overestimate, and then if anything, you can just pinch that off and then make something smaller, like some earrings, for example, with the leftover wire. Or maybe even if you have a little bit or a lot of it of leftover wire, you can do one of those copper wire trees, which I've shown in other videos how to do. All right, so we're just winding and winding and winding. I'm getting faster. And also, if you'll notice, my bar here is getting a little bit longer. And I'm of the opinion that if it's longer, then it's kind of easier for me to go outwards more. But I don't know that that's necessarily true or true for everyone. It could just be for me, or it could just be a matter of opinion. But we're getting close to the end here of the 24 gauge wire, and once we get close enough, I'm gonna stop and then switch around and start wrapping and doing the same thing, only on the other side. So here you can see how it's long and how instead of being straight across, it's like diagonal, and it gets all wonky like that. And that's when it's time to realign. However, we're towards the end of the wire, so I'm just gonna ignore that for now and just flip around to the other side and get wrapping again. And let's see, make sure I'm wrapping in the right direction. Okay, everything's checked out, and we're reeling. And I might actually have a little bit more 24 gauge wire than I need on this side, but that's all right, because if anything, I could clip it off and then use that excess to continue wrapping on the other side, because I kind of felt short on that side. But we'll see. We'll see what happens towards the end. Just kind of straightening out every direction of the coils so I can continue. Kind of looks like a strobe light, the way the light is hitting my hand. I don't know what that is, but just trying to entertain y'all folks while I just reel this in silence. Silence is, they say silence is golden, which is true. I like silence. I'm of a calm and peaceful mind like that. But I know that for other people, silence is awkward. Awkward silence, they say. And I guess, I don't know, if there's like tension in the air, then it could be. But also at the same time, thinking like, people kind of just build the tension in their own minds, and it's not necessarily there until they do something to make it there. You know, like for me, when people say like awkward silence, I'm like, well, it wasn't awkward until you made it awkward. You know what I mean? I know that's not always the case, but I think in general, people got weird stuff going on in their minds and let their imagination run wild, making things awkward when they ain't. Got a lot of philosophy, but that's the one that comes to mind today. Always thinking of like, oh, I'd love to like drop some knowledge here and there in my videos. And then of course, when the moment of truth comes, I'm drawing a blank and all I got is silence is golden. All right, so here's where we're at. We've got, this is where this wire ends, and then so we've got about that much. Oh my goodness, get focused. We've got about that much wire left, and it's actually good to have like a good amount, like probably if it were perfect, it would stop like right here, because this wire is gonna get wrapped around the 18 gauge wire, and as it does it, these bands here, they're gonna stretch out, and as they stretch out, this stretches along. So to show you what I mean, I'm gonna eyeball, let's see, we'll kiss the points, and then eyeball kind of here's the middle, and then for the middle of this wire, you want to do the middle of the wrapped portion, not necessarily the middle of the wire, which could be different. Could be the same too, but could be different. So for the wrapped portion, more or less the middle there, and then we're just gonna do like the same thing. This is what I mean by triple wrapped. So if this, oh my goodness. If this is considered a double wrap, then wrapping it one more time would be a triple wrap. Although now that I think about it, this would be like a single wrap, and then this would be a double wrap. So maybe that's what I was calling it. And then a triple wrap, well that would just be too much. So carefully, it's gonna be a little stiff, especially if your 18 gauge wire, like mine, is of a soft variety. You can actually get your wires, you can select the softness. So the gauge, thickness of the gauge in general, yeah, it would dictate how stiff or how hard the wire is to bend, but you can get like custom softness, in which case I would almost argue that this 20 gauge wire is a little bit, well, it's about as equally as soft as the 18 gauge, which is not normal unless you select soft. And I got this, unfortunately, maybe unfortunately or fortunately, I got this 18 gauge wire at a much softer, bendable rate than than I had expected it to. But maybe it works to my advantage. Who's to say? Well, probably somebody who is familiar with the gauges and softness. That's for them to say. So here, I'm just careful to I'm using the, oh, there you are. I'm using the flat part of the pliers to just kind of massage, because initially it will tend to coil up in a bunch, so that, see how these, well, for example, you see how this middle bump here is slightly taller? This middle bump right here. You see how it's slightly taller? My goal is to have them more or less symmetrical and smooth and of the same length. So what I'm doing is with the flat part of my pliers, I'm just kind of like massaging that and pushing it down so that they're more or less even. And then I'll continue to wrap along. And then this portion takes a little bit longer, and unfortunately, I don't really have a trick for you to make it go faster. But I don't know that you necessarily want it to go faster anyways. Because if you do, you could miss the point where, the stopping point where it's ready to start the next phase. So as you wrap this, if yours are tight, if your bands are tight like mine, then you'll start to notice that it gets stiff and it's not easy to wrap around. And if that's the case, what you do is you just kind of, I'm pulling kind of strongly, and that just kind of loosens up these bands. Here you can see, for example, there's like a few gaps in there. These gaps, they're actually good, because if it's too tight, then it's going to be impossible to bend this wire around the 18 gauge, and if you don't tend to it, it will actually snap and break the wire, which obviously you don't want. So as we continue to coil along, we will just occasionally pull outward and stretch out the bands. And that's what I mean when I say like this amount of gap right here, or this portion that is not wrapped. It's good to have a good portion of it that's not wrapped, so in order to compensate for the stretch aspect, the stretch factor. And so I'm just kind of, as I am, coiling along, and then from here I'm gonna check to see like, okay, so my goal is to have enough of this wire to wrap completely around the stone. So I may or may not have enough wire. We will find out in just a moment. Let's see if I can refocus it. apologize for that. I had to delete the deleted memory of all the old videos because the storage on my phone was full. And if that happens again, unfortunately, I'll have no choice but to take a quick break and upload this onto the computer and then delete this video as well to free up more storage, which may or may not result in a part 1, part 2. Hopefully I won't have to do that. All right, well, I'm almost done with this portion of the wrapping, so let's see where we're at. Yeah, we're almost there. Really, actually probably more about just halfway. And in that case, what I will have to do is, remember how I showed you I have 2 of these 20 gauge wires. I'm gonna have to pull off another spool of the 24 gauge and wrap this one and then link it as well, which I may just end up doing off camera since I've already shown you how to do that portion. All right, but for now, I think what I'm gonna try to do, at least, I have a lot to work with on this. Actually, I'm gonna leave that there. So I'm gonna pause, wrap this up real quick, and then I'll turn the camera back on and catch you up. All right, welcome back. So this is what I created while the camera was off. I mean, you've seen it before. It's the same thing as this one that we've already attached. It's just unattached. And so with that, let's get it attached. So instead of starting at the middle, like I normally do, I ended up, I slid this one out towards the right of the wire so that it's no longer in the middle, it's more on the right side. And then I'm just gonna have this one be a continuation. So this one, I'll bend at the tip here, just where it stops being wrapped at the bands. And carefully bend it outwards. And I just realized that the reason why I like to start in the middle, there's actually a reason for it, is because when I'm stretching these out, the more length of wire there is down here, the more difficult it is to stretch out, but it's not impossible. So we'll just keep going. Starts to feel tight again, so I'll stretch out. Then continue to wrap. Stretch out. Continue to wrap. And I am going a little bit faster, but that's just because I'm experienced enough to feel it for when, if you go too fast, then you can easily mess up and get those, well, I don't really have any in here, but those bumps that I was showing you earlier where there's like one that's just taller than the rest. So that's why in the beginning, it's good to go slow and just kind of learn the technique. Rather than trying to rush through and speed to the finish line. So here my wraps are really, really stretched out. In fact, they're so stretched out, I don't want them to be that far apart. So I'm just gonna do my best to it's all right. Okay. So from here, we're just kind of back to going slow. I want to make sure that everything feels right. Nothing is too tight. Stretch it out if you need to, and just continue to roll, wrap, twist, twine, whatever you want to call it. So I'm thinking about it, and since there is this gap here in the middle, I'll show you what I mean. Get these wires out of the way. Since there's this gap between where these two are wrapped, I'm thinking maybe I could do like a cool little design there, like a figure 8 or something. Nothing too fancy or too complicated. But that's gonna be probably where, well, it could be the top. It could be the top, and that's ends up being where the lace loop goes through, or it could be the bottom. And now that I think about it, I kind of like the idea of having it be the top, and then these end wires will create something cool at the bottom. So if you look here, you can see how it starts to get a little bit thicker, and that's what you want to avoid. Sometimes it's an indication that the wires are too tight and they need to be stretched out. So we're gonna do that just as we finish. And then from here, so we've got them both attached now, right? And then, you know, I changed my mind. I was gonna make a loop here in the middle, but I think with all these cross wires, it's just gonna be a little bit too complicated. So what I'll do is, I'll just finish out these wraps, just working all the way to the end of the wire. It's looking a little crazy now with all the wires going every which way. And then once I complete to the end tip here, make sure I get the pliers to curl that last little tip in, because you don't want to have that poking out. That would be a nuisance if it were to be poking the jewelry wearer. And then just get to the end there, stop, and then get to the other side, continue to wrap. Make sure the bands are well, tight, but not too tight. I can feel myself actually getting a little antsy as I come to the kind of, I guess, middle or the finish. Maybe finish in a sense of time, but haven't even really gotten the crystal yet, so hard to consider ourselves finished. But the long, time-consuming part, that's over. So now I feel anxious wanting to get it done, but it's important to just not only breathe, but breathe deep and breathe slow, because that's how you cure the anxiety or deter yourself from wanting to rush to the finish. To go slow, deep and slow. All right. So from here, kind of, we could just conjoin these wires and even do a temporary across just to hold them together. And then we can coil them up to do something with them later. Just kind of weave it into itself so it's not sprawled out in the way. And then from here, let's look at the length of the double wrap. Let's see. Oh, we definitely did too much. Damn. All right. Well, let's see. I was having such a good time, I lost track of time. Because generally I just want to have it to like that amount and then stop, but you can see I have all that excess there. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to really just undo that. I'm gonna try something. I won't do that. I'll keep this length. Will I do that? Is that gonna work? Because if I do this and leave all this extra length, it could just go wonky, which I definitely don't want that. I'm just distracting myself now. All right. So here's what we're gonna do. So I've crossed these two wires, right? And then from here, we're actually gonna continue to wrap around and in between where we've already wrapped. And you wanna pull it kind of tight so that it's snugly wrapped. But if you pull it too tight, it will actually separate these wires and then create this undesirable gap, which I don't want to demonstrate for you because it is like impossible to fix. But just be mindful of that. So you just want a smooth layer of single wire between each double wire. If I do by some chance make that mistake, I will definitely catch it on camera and stop and show you what it looks like, and then you'll immediately understand why it's undesirable. But for now, I'm just gonna do my best to avoid doing that and just smooth wraps. All right, so that looks pretty good. We'll stop right there for a second and then catch up on the other side. And so this, I can stop here and show you, like, see how that wire just splits those two and then it goes tightly snug? That's what I'm talking about, of what you want to avoid by pulling it too tight. I kind of got away with this because it was only the beginning part, so it's easily fixable, despite what I said about how it is impossible to fix. But that's only because that was the first wrap, so it's easy to go back. And then, yeah, so from there, we're gonna do the same thing, just smooth wrapping around in between the double wraps there, making sure we don't skip any. And then from here I can see, do you see this one's kind of sticking out? So before I wrap that, I'm just gonna get the pliers real quick and work that back and forth. Kind of massage it out of there, and then we can continue. Let's see where we're at from here. Looks all right. And then, so we'll just continue till we run out of this wire here. My hand is actually starting to cramp a little bit. I don't normally put on a full hour's worth of wire wrapping consecutively. If anything, I'll do like 2 and then take a break, and then if I want to continue that day, I'll come back to it later. But this one is for you guys. So I'm just gonna curl the tip here, because if I try to tuck the tip in, then I risk doing that thing that I don't want to do. So I'll curl the tip and then bend that in, and then we'll continue on this last portion here. Not to imply that it's last and then we're done. We really, like I just said, we've only just begun. We're only about halfway there. All right, and then same thing, curl the tip, right? And then we'll just fold the tip down across, lay it flat. All right. So I'm still undecided if I want to, and I'm starting to think that, yeah, it's gonna be the only way is to unwind all the unnecessary, unfortunately. But this will be fun because I've never actually done this before, and I'll get to look at this from a new light, a new angle, and see if there's something else that I could do with this. I want to be careful as I unwind it, because I don't want to start like loosening this up, even though that's not the portion I want unwinded. So you gotta be careful with it. We'll stop there, flip around to the other side. Actually, we'll do like a few more. We'll stop there. And then we'll unwind the other side, probably to about here. Okay, and then let's see how that looks. It's a little better. Could do a little bit more on each side though. Perfect. Okay. So for my next trick, I'm gonna cross this wire over so that it's on the front side of both of these 18 gauge wires. Actually, don't want on the front side of both of them. I'm gonna tuck it through here, fold these wires down, and then have it come around the top, and then now it's gonna wrap around both of the 18 gauge wires. We'll do that twice for now. Just to kind of hold it in place, and then we can pull these 18 gauge wires closer to each other, and we'll do the same thing but reverse with this one. So it's going to come through the back and go underneath. Sorry about that. Sometimes the wires get caught under the legs of the stand and just takes it out. Apologize for that. All right, so now that they've both been wrapped twice, kind of looks good like that. Yep. So they're both locked in there. The crystal still fits, which is a good sign. And I think from here, I'm gonna have these guys cross one time. That's just to lock it all into place, make it easier. But also, I'm ready to create the neck loop. So I'll clip off, I only need about 2 digits of the finger's length. And then pinch a tail, then curl it around the finger. And I want to make sure that it stays wide, so that way the curl stays, the tail stays on the top portion of the curl as I spin it around the finger. That way the loophole stays the same width the whole way through. And then from here, I'm gonna take the other 18 gauge wire, wrap it around the neck, start at the top, work my way downwards towards the wrap, and then I'll curl the tip inwards, kind of tucked in and hidden. Now for these guys, what do I want to do? See, if they weren't wrapped, then I would know that what I want to do is start to wrap them here, and then they'll do something. But we're not gonna be able to get to that. Maybe what I'll do is do like a triple wrap initially and then change it up, which will work because I do have a little bit of wiggle room in this loop here to still fit the crystal. I'm not going to be closing the gap so small that the crystal won't fit inside. And then as well, if you'll notice, this is where it stops. So I'm going to wrap up until here and then I'll change it up. Which is good because it's running out of the length, which is kind of what I wanted. Anyway, it's using up the wire. I'll stop there, flip it around, do the other side. So here it's stopped and I see that, but I want to keep it kind of symmetrical to this side. So I'm going to continue on a little bit more. I might even undo this one little bit, so that way they look about the same length now. And then I'm gonna just get this because it'll bug me. That way the lace comes through this way as opposed to front and back, because then it would hang like that and nobody wants that. You want it to lay flat. All right, looking good, looking good. And then from here, I'm actually just gonna unwind these a little bit. See if I can't reuse them for something. I'll clip that off. Curl the tip back in. This is much more difficult than I expected. Normally it doesn't take so long. Right, well. There we go, it's curled in enough. And then, well, I'm not gonna be hasty and clip that off. Maybe I'll use it as it is. But we'll flip around to the other side and unravel this portion as well. So it's just like reeling, but only in the opposite, because I'm taking the wire off. And if you can hear that background noise, that's just Cody coming in and out, by the way. You guys want to say hello to Cody? Sure. Hi, Cody. Sorry for the distraction. Not everyone's a dog person, I guess, but all right. Back to it. We're here for a reason. It's not Cody. I'll just curl that tip in. All right. Now for these guys, let's see. Our stone still fits, yeah? Perfect. It's gonna fit just like that. You know, I'm thinking about it. I probably didn't even need to clip these off, considering how I'm gonna be using it. But maybe for this one, because it's not really enough wire for what we're gonna be using it for. But that's fine. Maybe what I'll do is a cool little design. So for the design, you just curl that wire one way and then curl it the other way and create kind of like this S, this backwards S. And then we'll curl it one more time. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side to keep it symmetrical. So you see that the wire goes outwards, pinch down, bend it, so now the wire goes inwards, bend it back outwards, and then once more, now it's inwards. Yeah, and then we'll just keep it like that. And then in order to secure those, that's what I'll use this little wire for. I'm gonna clip it in half. And then I'll wrap this around. Right, so it's there's the end of it, and I'll just curl that tip tucked inward, out of the way, and then this side I'll continue to wrap. And then with the end tip, same thing. I'll just curl it, see if I can bring it around this wire, perfect. And then I'll curl it inwards. Cool, so we've got that one side secured, and we're gonna get the other side. I'm just gonna bend those out so I have a little bit of room to work with. Pick up the wire. Wrap it around. Wrap it around twice. And then the tip, we're just gonna tuck that in so it's not poking out. And then we can pull tight. And then tuck that tip. Curl it inwards as well. And it's a little loose, so just really gonna kind of cram it in there. So that way, even if it's a little bit loose, it's not gonna come undone. Not so easily anyway. All right, so from here, we'll start on one side. And we'll take this leftover strand and just start to wrap it. And I'll wrap it in such a way that the short end, because it's not gonna be in the middle where we're wrapping, right? I'm just gonna take a short end and have that be on the wrap side, whereas the length is gonna be towards the tip end. And just a few good wraps in there. And then we'll curl that tip inwards so it's not poking out. All right, and we'll slide that down. All the way to that wrap where we just did. And then I'm gonna wrap this around, and then it will go over the wire and then under. So it looks like that. Or actually, no, I want to go under the wire and then over, actually, is how I want to do it. So the wire, it comes through the hole and then it goes under, which is in between the wrap and this wire here, and then it goes around and over the wire. Okay, and then from there, I guess it really doesn't matter. I was thinking that I was gonna do something and have the wire go across to the other side, but actually, we're not gonna do that today. So we're just gonna continue to wrap this wire here. And then I think every so often, we're just gonna do the same thing and pull it through so that it wraps around the entire wire, the entire wrap, and then back on to that original wire, just the one. Just like so. So what I'm doing, I'm just doing more bands here, getting ready for the next one, because soon I'm gonna go and wrap all of it again. So it goes all the way around, over, and then under the one wire. That looks to be about the middle point. So I'm gonna stop there for now. And then I'm gonna pull off some more 24 gauge wire. Clip that. And then do the same thing only on this side. So just like before, we'll start with the short end, wrapping towards the wrap. And then the long end is towards the tip of the 20 gauge wire. Just tuck that tip in with the plier, the flat part, the pliers. Slide that all the way down. And then this will get wrapped through and all the way around. And make sure those bands are tight. So if you can see, I'm using my thumbnail to just pull the bands tighter together. Best I can. Couldn't really reach that last one, so flipped and came around. Used my fingernail. And right about there on the other side is where we stopped, and then wrapped all the way around once more. So we'll come all the way around and wrap back onto the wire. Keeping those bands tight. Have a little look. Got a few more to go. I think there's a good spot, and then we'll just wrap it through. Comes all the way around and then back onto the wire. I think I did it too early. That's fine. I'm just gonna do one more. All right, so there looks like a good spot, and then I'll poke it through, wrap it all the way around. And then wrap it back onto the one wire, and we'll give it like 5 bands. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we'll bend it out. Now it's looking pretty symmetrical, right? Make sure the crystal still fits. It's good to do that. Check it every once in a while. Looking good. But it's still, the window's too loose. So if I wanted to, the crystal would just poke right through, and especially in the back side as well. So the back side is what we're gonna start on next. I think it makes sense to cross them like that. I think that's a good spot for that. And then we're gonna cross these wires as well. So this wire was originally from this side here, and then this wire came from here. And we're just gonna spin it around and spin this one around. And so when I say spin it around, it goes across the cross, right? And then after the cross, then it gets back latched onto one wire. And in fact, it's back onto the original wire. So this wire came from this side and then swung around, and now it's back on this side. Same thing, this wire came from this side. All right. And then from there, looks like that's a good amount of length, and then I'll stop and wrap it, except it's not gonna go all the way around everything. This wire here is gonna poke through the little gap between the big wrap and the little wrap on the other side. So you see how it doesn't wrap around this small portion wrapped here, but it gets tucked in between. And then wrapped back where it started. And we'll do the same thing over on the other side. So we'll continue to wrap a few times. Check there. There looks good. So from here, it's gonna tuck, just like the other one, it's gonna tuck in between this little pocket. Pull tight so that it wraps around everything except for this little wire here. Pull it tight, and it gets returned back to where it came from. continue wrapping. I'm gonna take a little video pause here, just because I know I'm running out of storage, and upload what I have so far onto the computer so that way I could clear space on my phone. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I was able to get everything successfully uploaded onto the computer, clear some space. So now we should be able to continue onwards without really any interruptions. And with that, let's get back into it. So what I'm gonna do is continue wrapping along this way on this little band. And my intention is to have it line up more or less with where this one goes across there. So it's actually right about there. In which case we'll just poke it through the window. By the way, this is what I'm going to be referring to as the window. It's like an open window. So we're going to poke it through the window, and then carefully poke it through the little hole there. So now it's just linked. You've got these two guys are linked. I apologize, I don't know what happened. It must have been the copper or something. Something turned my fingers black. I haven't done anything except for the copper wraps. So, natural conclusion. That's what happened. My hands are all torn up, you know. You see my fingers. If you've made it this far, then hopefully the fingers, they don't really bother you. But I know sometimes I look at the fingers, I'm like, oh man, that's losing viewers right there just because my hands are dirty. Life is dirty. So thank you for the true believers that are, the true fans that are hanging tough with me. All right, and then so once we wrap that through, that kind of closes the gap a little bit. So now it's a little bit more of a tight fit for that crystal to fit in there. And then from here, I think what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm just gonna wrap all the way through. My goal is to have this wrapped all the way here so that I could just attach it here, kind of shortcut. So it kind of turns into like a half a diamond shape, like a V shape, very wide V shape. And that will, the idea is that will hold the crystal in place, at least on the one side, on the back side. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna continue to wrap. And then there's one technique that I might try to show you to make this wrapping speedy, but it gets crazy and out of control. I've already gone out of control. It's this technique where I just hold this in place and then twirl the wrap in order to spin it faster, but it's not really working for this specific wrap, so I'm gonna let that go for now, and I'm just gonna continue to wrap old school and be cool with it. So I'm gonna wrap a little bit fast, and then what that did is created those gaps right there, and I'll just boop, close those gaps, and then continue to wrap more. This really only works, this speed, once it's towards the end of the wire. So that's how I'm getting away with that. And then from here, do another little technique to kind of close out. I'm gonna leave just enough wire. Let's see. Oh, that's plenty. In fact, I'm gonna unwind a little bit. I didn't need to wrap quite so much. because I overachieved the goal to get to here. All right, and then see if I can just smooth out that wire a little bit, just massage it. All right, and then from there, how are we gonna do this? Let's see. Kind of want to try to poke it through the center here, but I'm not sure if it's gonna let me, in which case that's fine. I'm just gonna wrap around here. So I've went through the window and then around. You see this wire here where my thumb is, and then now it's wrapping back onto the original wire. And then from here, I'm just gonna wrap until I run out of the tip here. And then we'll curl that tip, tuck that tip inwards. All right, so we've got the one in place there. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this side. So I'm gonna start by wrapping just enough to get it aligned with, let's see, right about here, where that one wraps around. So this is kind of the technique that I was talking to you about, only if I were to go even faster. And the thing is, you don't want to get it so out of hand that you lose track and then you overdo it, overwrap it. So it's good to stop every now and then check to see where are you at. Because right there is about good, I would say, for me to poke it through the window and then tuck it in. Let's see, you see that gap right there that my finger just covered? So that's what we're gonna go for. Poke it through there, pull it tight, and then continue to wrap. And it looks like I'm gonna run out of the 24 gauge wire before I can achieve getting it to here, which is the goal. And that's fine. That just means that I'm gonna have to pull some more from the spool, which is not ideal, but in a pinch it works. So we're just gonna twine it. And then from here, you see how I created a few of them with the gaps. So we'll just clamp the fingernail down and tighten up those gaps. And then we'll just spin this around until we run out. And we'll curl that tip in. And let's see, I'll probably need maybe just like one reel around the spool. Might be a little bit over the amount that I need, but that's okay. So we're gonna take the short tip and have that be the one wrapping around towards the wrap, whereas the longer tip, the longer length of the wire is on the tip side. And then from here, if I can get it, I'm just clip it and hold that in place so that I can just wind this kind of separate from the rest of the wrap, and it's kind of like clean, easy breathing space for me to just do my thing. And then in a second I'm gonna check to see how much more wrap we have to do, which might not be that much. Just a few more. Let's see. Maybe like 2 more. 1 and 2. I'll do 3. I always end up doing 1 more than I say I will, and it's funny, but it is what it is. All right, and then from here, we're gonna take this, poke it through the window and all the way around, and then back to the wrap, back to the wire. And then we can spin it around. I have a lot of excess wire, so I'm starting to think maybe I can do one around the neck here and then around both those wires. And then I can continue wrapping both those wires. And then I really don't want to get too into that, so I'm going to clip off right there. And then curl that tip in. And then I'm just gonna create more or less an equal length of these 2 tips here, and then just curl them into little spirals. And tuck that spiral there against the neck. And same thing with this one. All right, so that window looks to be small enough now that the crystal should not easily pass through, right? And now we got to do something similar to the other side, although I'm a little bit worried about there. Maybe I'll end up doing it again once more, and that'll be all right. In fact, that's what we'll do right now. We'll do it with this 18 gauge wire that's left over from earlier. So we're gonna unravel a little bit more from the spool, some 24 gauge wire. I did about an arm's length, arm and a hand. And we're just gonna kiss the 2 points together, find the middle there, estimate more or less the middle of the 18 gauge wire, and then begin to wrap. I'll just do Looks like that was 4 on each side in the beginning. 3, 4. And then from there, let's see, I'm going to attach it on each side. So this wire is gonna go around through the window and then come out right there, just so that it wraps only around this little wrapped arm here. And we'll do it twice. Twice is nice. So we go through, and then from there, we'll continue on just the one. All right, and then wrap a few times just to get it in there. And then here, we're gonna do the same thing on this side. So it's gonna poke right in that gap there. And then through the window, and then once more. And pull it tight. And then this time when we wrap around, we get just the one, the 18 gauge wire. And just keep wrapping around the one. Right to about the halfway. We'll do a few more. There we go, that looks good. And then we're gonna poke it through that gap there between the little arm and the rest of the wrap. And pull that tight. And we're gonna do it twice. Keep it consistent. And then from there, we're gonna stop, take a little break, get it on the other side. Aiming for about the middle, about right there. And this is the longest video ever, but it is so worth it. I mean, just look at how beautiful this thing is coming out. It's gonna be a fun one for sure, which is perfect. Very good way to honor the malachite, which is, of course, my favorite. Malachite is such a temperamental stone, pun intended, because, you know, things like the temperature or the amount of moisture can really mess up the stone. I decided one day when I was like first getting into crystals and didn't really understand, I was like, I got this really nice malachite piece. It was about very similar to this one actually, a little bit lighter, and it was like a perfect oval cabochon shape. And I took it to the ocean to wash it and cleanse it. And as soon as the first wave washed over it, it just like snapped into like a million little pieces. And I'm like, oh. And then looked up the research later, like, yeah, that's like the chemical reaction. This is how some stones are. They don't do water very well, especially, you know, a giant ocean body of water. All right, so we made it to the middle point, and we're just gonna wrap it through, attach it twice. So there's one, and then I'll poke it through once more. You wanna make sure that if you're doing it twice, that they don't crisscross. So for example, like I wouldn't want this wire that comes from top to come down to the bottom, or if it were to come out at the bottom underneath and then cross this cross wire and go up over it. You want to make sure that it comes out on top so that it can wrap around up top. And then we'll just continue wrapping. But yeah, that was it was one of those. I'm a pretty spiritual guy, right? And so for me there's like a significance for every time, say like, you know, a crystal disappears or something, or it breaks. It's because it has served its purpose. And for me, it's like kind of lame, but the purpose that crystal served was only to teach me to be more careful of and mindful of the different types of crystals, and to just double check and make sure that what you're doing is not hurting the crystal. By definition of what is life, life is something that grows, and crystals technically grow. So I define crystals as living organisms, even if they don't appear that way. And you know, if you are of a different opinion of, you know, you got to be able to do this, that, and the other thing in order to be defined as living, then sure, like that's all right. I'm not gonna argue with you. I just have my own opinion of it. Because I mean, the other thing too is like, for like people are like, well, you have to have like a conscious in order to be living. And it's like, well, how do you know they don't have a conscious? You know, they're just operating at a different frequency. All right, so what I want to do before I finish off here is have these guys cross right about there. And in order for me to do that, I'm gonna have to do a few more wraps on this side. And the purpose of that cross is so that it kind of like shortens the window, so that there's absolutely no room for the crystal to fall out this backside that we're working on. Let's see. I think a few more on each side will be all right. It's starting to run out of wire, which is good, because I'm about done with this section anyway. And then it's to the final project, which is just the front side. All right. So we're actually technically not going to cross these 18 gauge wires. What I've done is just bent them in such a way that they're parallel to each other. And then from there, we're just gonna wrap the 24 gauge wires around. And then from there, we're gonna have to figure out how to weave this all into itself. Maybe just find a gap somewhere in there. Actually, maybe I don't have to go for there. I'm gonna go for where this arm comes around. I'm gonna try to poke the wire in that little gap there. Should be easier. Should be easier, I said, as I struggled. There we go. And then I'll just get this one on this side. And we'll just curl this one into like a little spiral tail. Curve this one in so it's not poking out. And then that tail can just tuck in as well. And then these guys, I don't know. They've already served their purpose. I guess I could just clip them off and tuck the tips underneath all that. All right. So now we can tuck that crystal in and it's not gonna fall out the back. Now we just gotta get something going on in the front to protect it as well from falling out. Just doing a little stretch. All right, so from here, we're gonna do more or less the same thing. Although I just thought of something that's also kind of cool for the front. So let's see, I clipped off some 20 gauge wire. It's about an arm's length in the sense of from the tip of my fingers all the way to the bend of my elbow. Probably a lot more than I needed, but it's all right. We'll kiss the 2 points together, slide down and find the middle, and then we're gonna clip this in half. So that way, these two are more or less the same length. And then, what we're gonna do is pull off some 24 gauge wire. I'm gonna do basically from the tip of my finger to the length of the top of my head is about what I'm doing for this, which again is probably more than I need, but I'd rather have more than I need than not enough. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna kiss the 2 points here. And if you've seen my ring videos, it's kind of like the same thing with the start of my ring videos is what we're gonna be doing here. So we poke these 2 tips in this loop here, estimate more or less what is the middle, and then we'll start to wrap both of them together. Making sure that the 2 20 gauge wires stay intact with each other and they don't start to curl. And see how they're crossing over there. I want to make sure that they don't do that. So what I do is, once I have a few wraps, I use the flat part of my pliers to hold the wires in place as I continue to wrap bands. All right, so we're coming up on, we just probably went over an hour and 30 minutes. Hopefully this doesn't take much longer. I don't imagine it would take over 2 hours. I would expect to be finished by then. But definitely, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and pause this video and get up and stretch, go do something, get relaxed, and then you can come back into it and continue. All right, and then so as for me, as you come back in from your little break, this is what we've done so far. We've wrapped these 2 together, and now we're just gonna find a way to attach them into, ooh, I see a way. All right, so what we're gonna do is with these 2 long strands of 24 gauge wire, we're gonna tuck each respectively in through about the top here. And let's see, they came on the outside, so I'm gonna keep it consistent. So see how they come on the outsides of this wrap? So now we're gonna pull it through. Pull it through tight, so that way it looks like this. Apologize, I don't know how that happened. I think maybe with my chin or something, or my sleeve, I don't know. And then we're going to, wrap. I wanted to wrap around these spirals just to kind of lock them in place. But if I do that, it doesn't look so good. So that's all right. We're just gonna leave those spirals alone for now. So then we come around, and from here, we're gonna pull, for the 20 gauge, we're gonna pull the ones that are closer to the inwards of the crystal. We're gonna pull them down. And then we'll begin to wrap with the 20 gauge, the 24 gauge wire. We're gonna wrap around just the outside 20 gauge wire. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. So you see how I pulled these two down, and then after the 24 gauge wire came around from over the backside, they begin to wrap just on this 20 gauge wire. And if you have an imagination like me, you are totally seeing a turtle right here where you got your shell in the back, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a little head right there. It's a Ninja Turtle. Okay, enough playtime. Let's get back to it. So we're gonna do a few wraps around just the one wire. And then same thing on this side. Let's see, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6. Okay. Was it really 6? Oh, there was one more, so I'll do one more. And then from here, we're gonna tuck this under once more. So it goes back between the wrap and the crystal back to the backside. And pull it tight. And then wrap it back around. And then I'm gonna do a few more wraps on this side. I'm realizing it's a little uneven because the crystal is not perfectly square. It's a little bit more slightly diamond-esque in shape. So do a few more wraps. And then I'm gonna do the same thing where I poke it through between the crystal and the wrap. Now it's coming out the backside, pull it tight, and then wrap it all the way around, back onto the one wire. Now for these legs that have not been getting wrapped, I'm just gonna do a little triangle. So they came straight down, right? And now they're getting a triangle. Let's get, and then I gotta do one more little angle so that way they get back to being parallel with the wraps. So it looks like that. And then they can continue to both get wrapped by the 24 gauge wire. Getting wrapped back in together. Carefully though, not to crisscross them. We are gonna make it to like 2 hours. But hopefully you did all the things you needed to do on that quick little video pause break. And of course you can always take your own breaks in between. Cause this is it, we're in for the long haul. All right, so from here, it's looking a little wonky. So I'm gonna do my best to use the flat part of the pliers, flatten the wrap. Not only flatten it, but flatten it and bend it in such a way that now you can see that it's flat. And what I did here is a little bit of an error because I didn't wrap it tight. That's all right. It's kind of too late now. And it's such a minor error that it'd be hardly noticeable. Only to me in my eyes. All right. So from here, we're gonna do the same thing where we bend and then continue wrapping one wire. Just a few wraps, and then we'll tuck it once again underneath. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tuck it underneath this little wire as well, so that it gets wrapped. Do I want to do that? Yeah, that's what I want to do. And that way it will come all the way around, back onto the wire. And then I'll stop right there. And then catch up on the other side. So with the other side, I gotta start wrapping these two together once more. And making sure that they don't crisscross. So what I'll do is just flatten it. And do a few more. And then from here, take the one wire, bend it inwards, and then do a few wraps on just the individual. And then I'll tuck it as best as I can. In this gap right here. And then it comes all the way around, coming out from the back side. Do a few more wraps. And do a few more actually, just because the lack of symmetry on both sides. Because I want to have these two more or less at the same height before I link both of the 20 gauge wires back together. So from here, I'm gonna clip off the excess here, because it's just, at this point, it's just gonna be in the way. And I'll curl those upwards towards the crystal this time. Doing my best to keep it aligned so that it doesn't twist into, what are those things called? A whirlpool or a tornado? Right, and then these guys are gonna get triangulated just like before. Take a quick pause here. All right, thanks for bearing with us. Just had to do a quick little pause. Where we left off is I got this one done, but I need to wrap it so it's snug and secure. And I think that what I want to do to finish off is just do another spiral tucked underneath this one here. Just like so. And then from here, we're gonna do another little triangle. So we zig it, and then we zag. And then this is gonna come over and wrap around both of those guys. And then for this one, I think what I'm gonna do is switch it up so that the final spiral is just gonna cover that little spot there. And in order to do that, I'm gonna try to poke this through, and it's not really working. What I'll do is instead is just poke through the bottom there. And then have it come through around the other end. Pull it tight. And I probably could have done a few more wraps, but that's all right. And then from here, we're just gonna clip off all the excess. And then we're almost done. Clip off the excess and leave just enough for one last little spiral at the bottom there. All right, and it's looking good.